Hey, everybody. Real Estate Coffee Talk podcast number 2. Have an awesome guest. We got a lot of good treats for you today, especially if you are somebody that's looking to make the transition into the real estate world, whether you're a part-time agent looking to make that full transition, or if you're just doing it on the side, So we got one of the most impressive agents in the local Cleveland area, William Ali. Thank you for being on, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So
I think we had a pretty successful podcast last week. A little bit of technical difficulties that we ran into.
We'll work through it. Growing pains.
I think it came out pretty well.
Yeah,
I agree.
Side of my head. That was awesome to see the entire time.
And Dustin moved spots because he felt insecure. So
I did. You could really see. You could see like the lip line, and I'm like, oh my god, that's bad. And when Matt called it out, dude, you know it's bad.
I was wondering where that glare was coming from.
One bald person.
Thank you, Matt, for that.
But so Will, why don't you kind of just give a brief introduction of yourself, how long you've been in the business, and
So I've been in the business going on 8 years now, following in the footsteps of my uncle Tim Ali, who is one of the most well-known names here in the Cleveland market. Joined the family business, like I said, about 8 years ago. Shortly after I got into the business, 2-3 years into the business, I did get my broker's license as well. So as soon as I started, business picked up very quickly. So I definitely had the amount of business and transactions needed to take the next step in my real estate career. So a lot of agents, they don't really have the guidance when they first get into the business, but fortunately for me, I had a great mentor in my uncle to really get me to the next level. So
Awesome. I mean, what are some of the tricks in the trades or some of the techniques that he taught you to grow your business over time?
So I think some of the biggest things to grow your business over time is definitely hitting your sphere of influence all the time. You want to be top of mind as much as possible. So whether that's on social media, phone calls, text, emails, even mailers, if you do want to, go the extra mile in that respect. But you want to be top of mind so that way people are always reminded that you're in real estate and they know what you're doing, because for us, everybody knows a realtor, whether it's, family, friend, coworker, somebody's always doing it on the side. So you just want to remind them that you're the best and, you can service them and anybody they might want to refer over to you.
Awesome, man. Nice. Loaded question, but I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Absolutely. So if you had to pick a favorite on how to stay on top of your sphere, what would be your go-to method of doing so?
Well, I think to stay on top of your sphere, there's only so much you can do because there's only so many hours in the day. So I think it's very important that you do have some sort of email structure set up so that way you're always at least getting in front of them that way, whether it's once a month, every couple weeks, or every quarter, whatever it might be, just so that way, they still know that you're in the business and you're still working your tail off. But I also think that a phone call is definitely the best, way of communicating with your clients. So that's more personal, more face-to-face, so to speak, and you get a lot of better vibe out of, their reaction as well from something like that. So
I think a lot of people, when they first get in and everybody says, you got to use your sphere, they get really nervous because nobody wants to, pitch their family or try to sell them something. What I've realized, or what I think has worked, and you can even weigh in on this, is just a simple reminder, kind of like you mentioned, this is why I love what I do on social media, or this happened to me today. Anything like that, I think is a really good way to stay in front of them without acting salesy. Did you run into that at all when you first got in? Or?
Well, I've never had a super salesy approach, so it was never really an issue with me, but I can definitely see how some agents, when they first get into the business, they don't want to be pretty much a walking billboard reaching out to all their clients or, their family and members and friends and whatnot. So it is a little bit difficult, but I think that's a threshold that you just have to get over, and you just have to, at least make that contact, let them know. Of course, it is a little bit more difficult than you would think, but I think it's a necessary thing at the same time.
Yeah, Dustin, we talk about this all the time. It's the fear of prospecting and feeling like you're a bother. I feel like that weighs in a ton with this conversation. When you're first getting in, you can't feel like you're a bother. You have to understand that what you're doing is the right thing, and you have to use your sphere to help grow your business.
Well, and at the end of the day, you're providing a service too.
Yeah.
So you're not really a bother. You need to have a very specific approach when you're reaching out to these people, because you do have value, and you want to make sure you instill that in whoever you're talking to.
Yeah, no, Will, Evan, Sam, I'll be the first to attest it. Yeah, I do have fears with prospecting, because you have that, I have this imposter syndrome where I feel like I'm asking for business and I'm being salesy. But I mean, let's face facts. I mean, honestly, we sell everything to everybody any day. Like, I sell the fact that my daughter needs to grow up with good morals. I sell the fact that I have conviction that I do a good job. Like, we stand out. Anybody can write a loan. Anybody can sell a house, I'm sure, right?
Right.
If you stick in front, they're going to do it. Whether the job that they do is going to be dictated upon their passion. And I guess that kind of brings me to my next question. Should you even get into this business? I mean, is it worth it? What are like some of those that tenacity that you have to have? What are some of those key factors that you have to stand out?
That's a great question. So I think that you really have to decide on a personal level if you want to take on this type of commitment, because real estate is much different than any other job. You have to do a lot of prospecting, and it's not your typical 9 to 5. So you really need to put in the commitment and the time to be able to excel in this business, because like we said earlier, there's so many people out there doing it. You want to be in that upper echelon of realtors to be able to get that consistent business and make a living for yourself and your family consistently. So I would say the most important thing is you want to make sure that you have the time to do it and you don't get into it half-heartedly, thinking that it might be a side hustle and okay, if I might make a few extra $1,000s a year or whatever. I think if you want to go into it full-time, you're going to have to put in the work the first year to 2 years really aggressively to get your business to where you want it to be.
Awesome question, man. Thanks.
Yeah, and it definitely is a time commitment. I think a lot of people think, oh, this is awesome because I can pick my own schedule, and every weekend they're planning stuff with friends, family, and then somebody wants to go see a house. It's like, well, I'm going out to eat or whatever it is. And I mean, sometimes you just have to be prepared, like to say, hey, like I got to go work, because our working hours are not the same as most normal people, because most people are working during the day. So when they want to see houses, it's in the evenings and on weekends. So when most people are doing stuff that they would consider fun, that's when a lot of times that we have to do work-related stuff, and then fun can be after that. But sometimes you have to sacrifice some of those times spent with family, friends.
Well, and like you said, I mean, the
things.
flexibility is great, but you also have to be ready to drop everything and go take a client to see a house,
And the
especially
snap
if
of a
it's
finger, too.
right. If it's hot on the market and you think there's going to be a ton of offers on it, you got to get them in as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So you might have to postpone personal plans or figure out another option. But you just got to be ready at all times.
Yeah, especially right now when showings, if they're not allowing multiple showings at once, when within a matter of 30 minutes it can be booked up for the next 2 days.
Exactly,
So-
and you might miss the opportunity completely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, having that flexibility, but also being flexible for your clients and your schedule is definitely something I had to learn over the years. It's a little bit easier with me because I don't have kids or a family yet. So, but people who have the whole kit and caboodle, obviously they have to manage their time a little bit differently.
I think the biggest thing to weigh into is there's so many, just like loan officers, there's so many realtors. So if you tell them, hey, I can't show you this house, they're going to go see the house. It's not up to you.
Well, that's happened
And
multiple times.
Especially in this market.
Exactly. And you just always have to be available. I think a lot of people, like you said, the flexibility, but they just don't realize you have to be available at all times.
Right, yeah, and I mean, so when I was using Realtor.com for a lead service, the amount of times where, like afterwards, like, oh, I try to follow up with the person. What do you think about the house? Oh, well, my realtor just wrote an offer, and it's like they didn't have, like they weren't available, so
Like, I'm
I
your
had to
realtor.
share. I'm like, well, what the heck? Like,
Right.
come on now.
And
So
that's a whole nother can of worms.
that is a whole nother can of worms, but like that just shows like, hey, like if you're not ready to, or if you don't have time, like most of these consumers, I mean, they don't want to wait, so they'll go and they'll find the next person to show you how.
Well, and that's just us as a society. We just want everything so quickly, at our hands, at our fingertips. So it's very important that you're there for your clients, so that way another realtor isn't showing your clients out there in the market.
What do you think about? Okay, so all right, there's definitely good agents. There's bad agents, right? And there's probably in between agents, right? So I also think that it comes down to like perspective and mindset. You have to the way that your perception of, all right, this is my client, this is my family member, I'm here. I think too, and maybe you can attest to this or comment on it, but how much of an emotional factor is there? Like when you're sitting in there, like in the back of your head, do you know at any moment I have to leave? Okay, I'm not talking like James Bond. Like any moment I'm willing to sacrifice. But like, do you stay positive about that, or do you look at it as a negative annotation? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
So since I've been doing it so long, it's just second nature for me at this point. But I would say when you're first starting off in the business, it's definitely an adjustment. For me, I wouldn't say there's a ton of emotion around it because I kind of like the excitement. I like being able to be on my toes and set up a showing or go see a house really quick, write up an offer. So it's what I've become accustomed to and what I'm used to at this point.
So it's your passion, okay?
Exactly.
So probably don't get in the industry if you don't have the passion because it's a disservice to yourself and your clients.
Right, and you have to be a people person to be in this industry. Absolutely, because you're dealing with people's emotions all the time. You're, counseling them, guiding them in the right direction. It's a very, very heavy role to play.
Yeah, I think that people need to separate people and liking too. It's like you have to like people. That doesn't mean you have to like the person. You're going to have people that you don't like dealing with, but at the end of the day, if you like people and your true goal is just to help families, that shouldn't affect you. Would I be wrong in saying that? Or?
No, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And that's been one of my goals ever since I got into real estate too. It's just always about the client. It's about the consumer, making sure they're happy not only in the near future, but in overall down the road. So that way we can end up getting referrals from them as well. So
awesome.
Cool. So, I mean, the whole purpose of this podcast is to not only help somebody decide if they should get into real estate, whatever side it's going to be. If they're going to be a loan officer, if they're going to be a realtor, mainly it's going to be about being a real estate agent. But, I mean, obviously we looked at, okay, you've got to understand the time commitment, but I feel like a lot of people expect to get in and just expect to make a ton of money. And I know it's super common for real estate agents to get in and make no money for a whole year. How would you say, and I know everybody's situation is different, some people get in and just absolutely kill it, but I mean, how would you say to tell somebody to keep themselves motivated when they're not making any money or running into a situation like that? How would you stay motivated?
Or grow business too.
Yeah.
So what I did personally is, it was a big change. Like you said, I mean, the financial landscape of being someone that is commission only, it's completely different than a 9-to-5 job where you have a salary. So to stay motivated where you go through these tough times, you just got to know that there is, greener pastures ahead, because when I first started out, I wasn't selling, the higher end homes. I was worried about not getting enough listings, but I kept pursuing my passion, my goals. And over time, I got more repeat business. I got into the higher end home brackets, and it just comes with time. It's not always going to be instantaneous, and a lot of it depends on your sphere. So if you don't have a big sphere to start off and you get into real estate, you're going to have to do an awful lot of prospecting. Now, however, if you do have a big sphere with some of the agents that we know, Evan and I know, they're very successful right out of the gate. So I think it just comes down to a very kind of personal level in that respect.
Yeah, you got to keep telling yourself it's going to get better. When everything goes down, it's going to get better. It's
right. And kind of you touched on sphere a little bit, and one of the things that I kind of understood and kind of sat down and said to myself when I got into this is like, I mean, when I started, I got licensed at 18. So my sphere, like my close personal sphere, like all my friends, like I don't know many 18-year-olds that are buying houses. Granted, one of our 20-year-old buddies just did buy a house, but I mean, that's the first of
and I don't want to cut you off. By the way, you have to be 18 to buy a house, guys. Okay, so if you're just coming out of high school and you have a job history and you're working, you can buy a house. Just want to give it my youngest clients, 2 of them in the past couple of years, are 18.
All you need is an offer letter, right? And some
not even offer letter. Are you working? Do you have W-2? I mean, you don't even have
we don't even
W-2.
have to have a pay stub. You get offered a job out of high school if you have the transcripts and an offer letter.
But your diploma is your history.
Yeah,
exactly. You just have to show that you are going to that there's a good chance that the probability of your income is going to continue with that employer. So, yeah, everybody, we'll touch on that another day. Sorry about that, Evan.
Yeah,
so I mean, get that out there.
I mean, that was one of the things that I kind of sat down and had to understand was that, hey, maybe my sphere business isn't going to be super great. Like, yes, I've done a few deals with like parents of friends and like other people, like relatives of mine, but like I understand that like the bulk of my close sphere is probably 5 or 6 years away from when I started to actually being in a position to purchase a home, which hopefully here is coming up within the next few years, 2 or 3 years, as people are just periodically graduating college, getting full-time jobs, and figuring out where they're going to be for the next handful of years of their life.
Yeah, and I think you are just on the tip of the roadmap for all this business that you're about to get. Like you said, I mean, most of your sphere is in a different life cycle than mine. When I got into the business, I was in my mid-20s, and I had a lot of family members and friends that were in that position to start buying their first homes, which, by the way, I love working with first-time home buyers. It's such a warming feeling just to be able to get those people into their very first house and celebrate with them. It's
super
excellent.
rewarding. Super rewarding.
Yeah. So, Will, would you say that majority of this, so obviously nobody's going to come into this industry and get to your stature, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's and even in my industry, the biggest thing that I look at is you have to win in the dark, right? You have to put in the time. And we all there's apprehension, there's hesitation, but just 1% better every single day is what I've been accustomed to, and what I've been trying to do is just get better. The biggest way to break procrastination calling is just do something. Make one phone call. I was going through it this week, and guess what? I reached out to my sphere of agents that I've dealt with, and I made the phone call. And I mean, come on, let me just think about it. It's psychology. Like, we don't like rejection. You're not alone. So if that is your fear of getting in the industry, and I'm sorry, I'm not in your side, but we're in real estate, just do it. Just jump. You're not going to die, okay? And it could be a life transformation.
And you're going to hear a lot of no's before you start hearing a lot of yeses. So just be prepared for that. People are always going to throw up their walls, but once you get into it and you have your rhythm, your pitch, and you know what you're doing, and you have that little bit more experience than when you first get in, you're a well-oiled machine, and you can get past those thresholds. So
yeah, no, that's actually, it's really, really, really interesting that you brought that up. So influence is your superpower. I can't remember Zane, like Joe Zane or whatever, I'm reading it right now, and she states, like, when you're talking, because the consumer is going to tell you no, right? Referral partners are going to tell you no, but you have to be accustomed to hearing no. So you become used to it. So it just comes secondary. Like today, Sam, what did I ask you? I called you up. They said, Sam, 9:15. I said, can you come over? And you're like, what? And I'm like, can you come over?
I was like, no.
I'm like, oh, okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about this podcast today. So, it's just that. The more no's that you get, it's going to get easier, right? And just because somebody says no doesn't mean they don't like you. It just means it's no right now, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't mean it's going to be no a
Forever?
couple months from now, a couple years from now. I mean, I've had people that have initially told me no, and then
It's okay.
weeks from them, it's like, hey, like I'm back. Like,
You don't
Right.
know what people are going through. You don't know what
Exactly.
day you're catching that.
Everybody's on their own schedule. They have their own stuff going on in their life. So sometimes it's just a bad moment in time.
And I'm going to let everybody know, if you're watching this and you're in the industry, I'm going to be calling you, okay, agent-wise, CPA, CFP. I'm going to be calling you. I'm going to be asking you to go out to coffee. And I'm not asking you to go out to coffee because I want your business. I'm just asking you to show you what our process is. We have a very unique process. I'm not going to talk about it right now. But what I can tell you is it's second to none, and we truly do care about our clients, because when you're taking on the largest debt of your life, it's imperative that you're educated. And that's where we fall in this industry, and I'm very passionate about that. How can you investments, okay, your house, 80% of Americans retire on the equity in their own home. Why wouldn't you deal with a certified mortgage planner? And I'm not knocking banks, right? But my first job was in a bank. I'll tell you right now, you don't have to be licensed, guys. So that person can be 18, 19 years old right off the street. When you work for a mortgage company or somebody that practices mortgages, they have to get licensed. Every single agent, you can't work for a brokerage and not be licensed and sell real estate, right?
Right.
Okay.
You need to be licensed.
Why would they allow?
You have to be sponsored by a brokerage to even take the test.
Yeah, you have to be sponsored. Yeah, and here's the other thing. You have to be sponsored in our industry, but 20 hours of continuing education when you get in the industry, just start selling. Like, no, that's, sorry. Didn't mean to get off topic here, but
No.
It's very important. We're passionate. Everybody that's sitting at this table right now. I did want to ask you, how do you pick a company? Why don't you tell, because you've been down this road. You've been down this road.
Multiple
I want to hear
times.
it from both of you. Let's hear it from the veteran, and then let's hear it from the newbie.
So I would say in my situation, when I picked a company, obviously it was a different situation since I work for a family company. So, there was loyalty there, and I think that was a good start for me. However, not everybody's going to have that opportunity afforded to them. So I think the most important thing that you want in picking a company is making sure there's a team that will stand behind you. You don't want to join a team and then they don't answer your phone calls, they don't answer your questions. They're not there for you. You want a team to fully service you just like you fully service your client. You need really good support staff. So I think that's very important. Also, I think it's important to understand the value that they're going to provide to you, whether it's leads or taking care of certain costs or whatever it might be. You want to know that stuff up front and see what the best fit for all of that is with your current situation.
And I think a lot of people too, I think the worst thing you could do is go for the company or the team or brokerage or whatever that pays the most. That's the absolute worst thing you could do. Because, okay, your commission split's 100% or 90 or whatever the highest one is. That's awesome. But if you don't have any clients, what good is that doing for you? I'd much rather take the lower pay with all this support and getting leads provided to me and having somebody who's going to answer my questions and answer the phone than, hey, okay, if I somehow manage to drum up one deal,
Couple deals, yeah.
I'll make 100% commission.
Well, I think I've told you this before. I was like, 50% of everything is a whole lot better than 100% of nothing.
Exactly.
So if I'm getting everything handed to me, like a lower commission split, I mean that's not a deal breaker for me. Like if I'm being provided with multiple different things that can help me run my business smoother, help me offer different things to my clients and service them better
and stand out.
Yeah, and stand out. I mean, that's a whole lot more worth it because it sounds nice on paper, like, oh yeah, I get 100% of my commissions. Okay, well, if you're not getting anything, if you're not getting anything from it, like you said, whether it's leads or stuff like that, I mean, what is that 100% really getting you?
Why are we focused on commission? I mean, honestly, did you get in it? I mean, I know every
No,
single
I
one.
know
No. I'm not saying you. I'm saying in general. No, people focus on commission, and they let it get to their emotions. But the other thing is too is you brought up a good point. Get with somebody that's going to be a good support staff, right? Mm-hmm. Which means that the commission is irrelevant, right? So we got in this industry knowing that we weren't going to make $1 million right off the rip, right? And you are good. Yes, you can make that, right? But we had to grind and we had to put the time in, and that was our true passion, was to help people. And how can you help people if you're not helping yourself? And helping yourself means having a good operations staff, having good experienced people, because let's face it, we're the people's lives, they're in our hands, flat out. They're in our hands. One wrong move and they're in a hotel. One wrong move, they're sleeping on a friend's couch. One wrong move, they don't have a house. Mm-hmm. So, we have to take our job seriously and just, at the end of the day, pick the good support staff.
Absolutely.
Be with a good company.
Absolutely. So I think we're going to take a quick break. I think that's a good stopping point here. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back talking a little bit more about picking a company and all other things you would expect to run across if you're going to get in the industry. All right, and we're back after a quick break there. So we just talked about how to pick a company, how to pick a support staff. Obviously, stay away from how much you're going to make. That's not important at first year at least, or first when you get into the business. Now, what I feel like is a lot of somebody who's going to get into the business, they probably have no idea what to do. They're like, okay, great, I passed the test. I have a sphere of people I want to reach out to, and my company's providing me leads, but I don't know what to say to these buyers when they call me. I don't even know what questions to ask them. I mean, Will, take us a little bit, a step-by-step. Say, for example, you get a new buyer who's not somebody you necessarily know. Maybe it's through your sphere or mutual friend or something like that. I mean, take us through kind of how you would handle that buyer. Is there any specific questions you ask them? Maybe do you talk about financing first? Do you talk about what they need in a house? I mean, what does that look like?
So I would say in this market, I think one of the most important things you could ask a new client, a new buyer, is definitely if they have their financing in order, whether they're going to be using cash to purchase their next home, or if they have already partnered up with someone in the mortgage industry. Because in this market, we know we need to get out in houses very quickly and be able to write offers even quicker. So they need to have that financing ready to go. So I think that's your number one question right now. But when you take that initial call, that initial conversation, I think it's very important to just remember that it's about the client, it's about the consumer, it's not about us. So you want to, dive in and ask them questions and understand what their needs, their wants, maybe their pain in the past was if they were possibly working with somebody else or if they had a bad experience in the past, whatever it might be. You want to listen to them and see what they're really looking forward for in this experience this time around. So I think the most important thing as well is you want to really understand what their parameters on their home search is. You don't want to go over their price range or send them homes that don't qualify for what they need for themselves, their family, whatever it might be. You want to make sure you're in tune to those details. And I would say the best thing to do on those calls is just be yourself. Build that rapport and just give them the confidence that you're going to be there for them no matter what. Whether they have questions late at night, in the morning, whenever, you're there to answer any questions they might have for you.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I definitely make sure to do as well is just I reassure whoever it is, whether it's a buyer or seller, like, hey, I'm here to help you. Like, my job is to do what you ask, to kind of direct you in the best possible direction and educate them. And I think that's something super important that you kind of need to emphasize. Like, hey, like, yes, I'm an agent, but I'm your agent. I'm here to help you. Like, I think that's something super important to emphasize as well.
I love it, man. I love it. I just want to, I didn't mean to interrupt, man, but that is like, you said something that really stood out. You didn't really focus on the pre-approval. Obviously, financing is important, right? But you shift over to just figuring out what they want, what their needs are. Like, that's something anybody that's listening, I can tell you right now, I can attest this 100%, that not every agent does that. So, that's another thing. In this goes beyond being an agent. This is just sales in general. Like, you have to really connect with that person. And how other of a way are you able to connect with just being open and honest with them and just asking them questions like, what do you want? Everybody's experience is different. Everybody wants different things. Loan officers, if you're trying to, get in touch with real estate agents, not every one of them wants leads. Sometimes they just need a good process. Sometimes they just want to talk to you. So we're all human beings, and I like it that you're asking about them and you're not just focusing on what I can do, right? So you figure out what they can do, and then you can figure out what you can do to fit those needs and create that solution. I love that, man. I'm sorry. I just wanted to...
Well, and it's very important to do that up front, too, because you want everybody on the same page, to make it a very smooth, easy transaction, transition for these people from wherever they're coming, whether it's a current house that they, purchased in the past or whether it's an apartment or, moving out of mom and dad's house. I mean, you want to make this experience nice and easy for them and, just be there for them at the end of the day.
I think it's super easy to assume what the client wants. So it's important to ask them. And I know we're guilty of this. I know agents are guilty. Everybody in sales or just customer service in general is guilty of just assuming what the client wants. And I know we run into this a lot. When you do like a debt consolidation, cash out refinance, we assume that, hey, the client wants as most savings. We're going to pay off all their debt. That's what we think is best, but it's not always what is best because it's not what the client wants. And I don't think that question's asked enough. Like, okay, you want to move, you want to buy a house, but like, what do you really want? And whether it be specifics to, what kind of house or how many bedrooms, but just in general, how long do you want to be in this house? What are your goals with it? I think all that stuff is super important.
How's retirement going to come into play? Yeah. Is you going to be in here when college tuition starts? Have you started a college fund for your children? How is this mortgage payment going to affect that? Those are things that we don't ask. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, so kind of like what you're saying. I mean, it definitely is important to kind of understand what fits their needs, and you talked about it a little bit. But for those of you who don't know, I also started. I first worked with William and his uncle, and one thing that his uncle had shown me was like, first of all, I always try to at least meet with the buyers in person before I show them a house. But right now, sometimes can be difficult because there's a house that you need to get into ASAP.
Absolutely.
But one of the things your uncle showed me was he calls it the gotta wanna know when you go on a first initial meeting with the buyers, and it's basically you just go through and you completely go through every category basically that's on the MLS, and you say, hey, okay, well, Are you looking for a certain range of bedrooms? I mean, you basically just go through a whole house and you figure out what do they want, what do they need.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out their must-haves and then the stuff that they can live without. So that way, you're leaving the parameters a little bit open when you're setting up these searches. So that way we're not constricting them to a very, very limited amount, because the perfect house is always out there for them. And we don't want to, limit them by our search criteria in the MLS.
And it's funny because most of the times they'll send you houses from Realtor.com or Zillow that don't match any of their search criteria.
Yeah.
Zillow said it was worth this, and it's still on the market.
But at the end of the day, the consumer's always going to do what they want to do. They prefer to search on Zillow and Realtor, and sometimes
it's easy, it's user friendly.
And that goes back to the coaching too. You got to coach them back to what their expectations were, what they're looking for, and kind of reel them back in and make sure that you guys are on the same page.
Right.
Another thing too, obviously for anybody who's buying a house, it's stressful. If it's your first, 7th, 10th, 20th time buying a house, it's stressful. And I think a lot of people get super confused on who does what in the transaction. So what does the agent do? What does the loan officer do? What does the title company do? All the time. I mean, I know you guys are answering financing questions. You don't want to because you're not comfortable. I know people are coming to us as I've been asked to set up a showing before. So like I think I'm serious. I swear to God.
That's funny.
And I think that's something else that's super important, like to lay down when you first meet with them. Once you have your team put together, obviously if they don't have a lender right away, you can't tell them, oh, don't ask me about financing questions because there's no lender yet. But I think that's something that's so important to, put in front of them immediately. Like, this is your financing person. They're going to answer any financing questions. This is where I come into play. And it's important for everybody to be on the same team too, and kind of saying the same things to the client. Because I think we touched on this a little bit last time, but if the agent's saying something different than the lender, it's stressful enough. When you're hearing so many different things, it just makes it 10 times worse. So I think,
and it's a huge waste of time too.
And it's a huge waste of time. So I think that laying that out up front and getting it out of the way is something that's super important. I'm sure you implement that into your process. I'm sure you guys all do. But I don't know if you have anything to weigh on that.
So as far as like when people come to me with financing questions or any questions, like I think I mentioned it last week as well, like on most purchase agreements, it says like, please consult with the appropriate tax or legal professional if you have any questions. Like, I mean, we're licensed to talk about real estate. We're not supposed to talk about law. We're not supposed to talk about taxes. Like, I can point you in the right direction, but I don't want to answer specific questions, because if I tell you one thing and it's completely different, like that's why I try not to answer questions about financing, just because I could tell them one thing and then the honest answer is completely
Something
far
different.
off of the deep end of what I told them.
Well, and we're all experts in our respective industries, so it's always better to just defer those type of questions to whether it's on the mortgage side to you guys, loan officers, or whether it's the title company. If there's certain liens or whatever it might be on a property, we might have the base knowledge, but again, like Evan said, we don't want to overstep our boundaries and try to answer something that we shouldn't be. So it's always good to defer those questions to the proper people.
Yeah. I mean, we run into the same thing too. I mean, when a client has a big chunk of money and they're trying to figure out, should I put it all down? Should I invest some of it? Should I put it onto the house? I mean, we're not going to answer that question because we're not financial advisors. We're not investment advisors. We'll give them suggestions. Hey, if you were to do this, hypothetically, if it looked like this, similar to kind of how you would do it, but it's the same thing for us. It's not our job. We don't try to talk on it. So I think it's just important to have your wealth team kind of put together, or your what did you call that? The wealth team.
Yeah, the captain of the wealth team.
There you go. Yeah. No, it's true. You have to have that put together and make sure the client knows ahead of time. Hey, this is your person for this. This is your person for this. So I know that's something we do when we first talk to a client, even if they talk to an agent first. And I just think that's something that isn't done enough.
Yeah, we're setting the expectation. So you got to understand that there's a ton of mortgage planners out there, right? A ton of mortgage planner, loan officer, whatever you want to call it. But I honestly, Will, I'm going to ask you this. I feel that the mortgage planner is guilty of not keeping you in the loop, and I honestly believe that you should be on those initial consultations. I think that, like, we use a mortgage coach report, like a total cost analysis. It breaks down everything that there is to know about a mortgage: down payments, terms, up to 4 different purchase prices, appraisal gap strategies. I want to incorporate these agents. I understand it's not your job, but you have to be on the same page. And I feel that agents are sometimes guilty of not, disclosing information to the loan officer immediately. And we're in different spectrums, and even sometimes agents on both sides of the deal, like they're butting heads. And at the end of the day, is it our ego or are we working for the client? And I have no problem bringing you in there. I have no problem. Hey, here's the financing. I ask the client, do I have permission to disclose this information? This is going to be in your best interest. And they will say yes. So that way you're not getting them emotionally attached to something over me. What's one thing for me to say, hey, this client's approved for $200,000. Okay.
Awesome.
Taxes,
Right.
where? They have X amount of money. I did or I did not have an appraisal gap strategy, discussion with them.
Where are their funds coming from?
Where are their funds coming from? Have you had a discussion on how volatile the market is right now? Every single one of the agents that's listening to this, or mortgage planners, you need to be calling your clients. You need to get them re-approved. We have seen the largest rate hike in a 30 to 45 day period in the last 40 years. The Fed Reserve monetary rate policy, highest that we have seen, 50 basis points in 20 years. And the spring market's going to hit. What was it? I just talked to you about this. What, 24 offers on the one house this week?
Yeah.
And you won it too, didn't you?
No.
Oh, you lost it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But why would you not want everybody on the same page? Everybody, listen, we're married together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to know everything about each other.
And the more everybody is on the same page, the easier it is for everybody. For us, for the consumer, anybody that's a part of that transaction, the more communication that you guys are everybody's on the same page, the better for everyone.
100%. And that's an easier way for you to deflect the question over to the financing company. Listen, we're all on the same page, but guys, remember we had this discussion? We all are on the same page, but you need to talk to them. And it shows that you have trust in the person that you're dealing with. Because the last thing, and I see this all too often, is an agent and a mortgage planner not trusting each other. Because they're just random, right? They just met each other. And we need to get over that, because at the end of the day, we all need to fight for the client. It is not about us. So we need to take our ego out of it and make sure that we're doing the best by the client.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a big thing. A lot of people need to understand that we need to put these egos aside and just do the best we can for the consumers that we're helping.
For sure.
100%. So, obviously, got a little bit off topic there. The whole purpose of that, okay, take us from start to finish. You have a new buyer who calls you. You're a new agent. You have no idea what to do. Now, I understand from just talking to you guys and kind of looking at everything that typically if you're a newer agent, you're going to be working with a lot of buyers. You usually don't get a ton of listings. I do know sometimes as a new agent, though, you get some listings. And I know if you put me on a listing appointment right now, I wouldn't know the first thing to do. And I know there's so much, chatter about, okay, should you cut your commission to get this listing? Or there's so much going on. I mean, what would you say to a new agent if somebody wanted to get in, they get their first listing appointment, they don't want to screw it up? I mean, what is your process there? What are some key things that's important to do on a listing appointment? You take us through that.
So I think it's just like as if you're representing a buyer. I think it's important to pitch your value from start to finish. So you want to make sure that, especially when you're representing a seller, you're working for them to get them the top dollar for their house, to get them the best terms, and make sure that they are covered to wherever they might be going, whether they're downsizing, moving into a new house, different city, out of state, whatever it might be. You want to make sure that all your bases are covered in that respect. So you want to really instill in them that you know what you're doing when it comes down to the contracts and how you're going to take care of them from taking that listing all the way up to handing the keys over to the new buyer. So it's a very encompassing sales pitch. You want to make sure that they're comfortable with you throughout the whole process.
Yeah. And I mean, there's like so many little things that go into it too, especially when somebody's selling and then buying. I mean, I had somebody yesterday, they were like, I'm really concerned because I want to list my house, but I'm nervous because I don't want to rush into a new house. And I'm like, well, didn't you have this discussion with your agent that, you could structure the contract in a certain way where you're going to have time to look for your house? Just like, no, I have no idea anything about that. And there's just so many little things that can freak somebody out a ton. And I think just all of it needs to be covered. Like, here's what's going to happen. We're going to list here. You're going to start looking for your house here. I don't think that's done enough.
I agree with you. I think that the agents need to communicate the consumer's options more. They need to run through the whole plate of scenarios. That way, if you end up going one direction or another, at least they're prepared and they're, like you said, they're not scared or they're not fearful of what is coming next.
Yeah,
and my biggest advice too for these new agents, I think going on listing appointments with some seasoned veterans, in the industry, making sure you see, and I recommend you go on several appointments with different agents. That way you can get a little bit, take a little bit from everyone's sales pitch and see how they do it when they're in front of clients.
Yeah. I mean, even in the other things too, and this could go with buyers and sellers, I think just going into the office, if you have one, going to the office, just listening to people talk on the phone. I know when I first got in, that's what I did. When I didn't have anything going on or I didn't have anybody to call, I would just go listen to the other seasoned people in my office and listen to them talk on the phone. And I learned so much from that. I think that's, out of anything that helped me in my industry, and I'm sure it's the same, that's probably what's helped me the most. I didn't learn much from the test, and the trainings, all that stuff's great, but I think just from listening to somebody else do it is what really, really helped me out.
Go ahead.
And so I was going to say, so to kind of touch on what we talked about earlier about picking a brokerage, and since you just brought it up, find some place that is going to offer you adequate training. There's a lot of places that will show you some videos, they'll do this, and they'll say, figure it out. But, I mean, that's how I learned. I mean, for the first several months that I was licensed, I didn't do anything on my own. I was just going on appointments, whether it was with you, whether it was with your uncle. I mean, that's how I learned. I mean, you're not going to learn how to show a house, how to do this stuff, unless you actually like experience it in person. So, I mean, that's how I learned. Make sure you find somebody who's willing to mentor you, willing to at least take you on appointments here or there. You got to find that. I mean, that's going to be something that's super important as well.
And with so many people being hands-on these days, I mean, that is very important. You want to see it firsthand. You want to see how it's done, so that way you can start putting that into your regimen when you're going through the process.
Personal growth. That's what I took away from that conversation that you guys just went over. Personal growth. Go in there on your days off. Mirror the people that are leading, okay? Right? Geniuses leave clues, okay? So if you know that you have a good agent, and trust me, a lot of people are just willing to help you, right? Mm-hmm. And if you ask a seasoned agent and they say no, just be like, okay, no, now, how about next week? People genuinely want to help people, and you'd be surprised how much they would sacrifice for you. So it's personal growth. That's how I grew my business. You don't reinvent the wheel. The wheel's already been invented. It's been invented since the beginning of time, right? And
exactly.
So why reinvent it? All you're going to do is just look to incorporate your personal spin on it and just follow the people that know what they're doing. And they've done all the hard work for you. Yeah. Why wouldn't you take advantage of it?
Made the mistakes for you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing too, we're fortunate because naturally in our industry, you're always in the office. Like, it's not as free as if you're an agent. You're typically in the office every single day, Monday through Friday at least. But I'm not sure if this is a good thing or if this is something that's common. And I know not every team in brokerage has an actual physical brick and mortar office, but I mean, would you recommend to like a new agent to go into the office a couple days a week and just, even if you don't have anything to do, just go in there? Because I feel like it's almost like the gym. If you just show up, you'll do something. And
I wish I would have done it more often.
Your mind's a muscle. Yeah. You have to work your mind out just like you do your body, and you have to feed it nutrients, and that's going to be better people.
Exactly. And once you're there, like, it's not that bad. Like, you're there. Like, I'm already here. I'm going to do something, whether it's calling, it's not really relevant, but whether it's calling expired listings or prospecting from a bunch of old leads you had forever ago and calling them and seeing what's going on, or calling your sphere. I mean, whatever it may be, I think just being in the office and not at your house is going to force you to do something. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I would 100% agree with that. I mean, at home, it's so much easier to dive into all these other distractions, and you're really in your comfort zone at your house because that's where you spend most of your time. So when you take yourself out of that environment and put yourself in the office, you could really crack down and start, prospecting or getting caught up on, your contracts, your documents, whatever it might be. But it just puts you in a completely different mindset.
Prospecting, okay? Prospecting is not calling people and asking for business. Prospecting is literally picking the phone up and saying, how are you? How are you? The reason for my call. State your purpose. Hi, my name's Will, okay? I got into the real estate industry. I had a huge passion for it, okay? Would you mind spreading my name and number around? Or would you mind having a consultation with me? Would you mind if I practiced my proposition, my first-time client proposition to you? Like, it's prospecting is just being with people. Like, Nobody wants to be sold, but if they know your intention and they know that it's meaningful, we all buy something, and we buy from the people that we like, right? So
exactly.
utilize your resources around you. It's just a phone call.
I think something that's sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to touch on that as well too. For the new agents, utilize your friends and your family members to practice on them, because they're going to give you the most constructive criticism. So before you potentially make a mistake with a client and have to backtrack, I would say practice on them and get familiar with the process.
I'm really glad I let you talk, because that's going to piggyback off what I'm about to say. I know there's a tool, and a lot of agents probably have heard of it, of like a CMA, a certified market analysis. And basically all that is you run comps kind of like you would do it probably before a listing, or even if you're going to offer on a house just to see what the house is worth or what the comps are. Why wouldn't you call 20 people on your wedding list, or who would be on your wedding list? Call them and say, hey, I'm a new agent. I have to do this thing called a certified market analysis. Can I put one together for you? And just tell me what you think.
Blame it on the company. It's like, I got to do
They're
25
they're
for the month.
forcing me to do it. And naturally, and I think this a lot of people
Well,
are
you'll
super...
take the grenade for that one, right? If you have an agent under you,
Right.
Tell them I told you to do it.
a lot more. I mean, there's so many people who are so... It's crazy to believe, but there's still people who are surprised as to what they could sell their house for. Like, it's still a thing. And I know when we did refinances a lot, we had to get appraisals, and people are like, seriously? Like, my house is worth that much? Like, screw this refi, I might sell. And if you call your 20 people on your wedding list, here's a certified market analysis that I have to do because my boss Will is making me do it. Here's the numbers. Just tell me what you think about it. And they might be like, oh my God, maybe I will sell my house. That could be a way to generate listings. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, but I know we do something similar. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think any way that you could just make your clients more knowledgeable about their home or the market in general, I mean, again, you're bringing value to them. So the chances that you open a door where you might end up listing their house, or they're ready to buy, or both, that's a great opportunity. You never know what conversation might lead to business. So I would say the more people you are able to get in front of and talk to, the better. So, and just like we said before, you're going to get a lot of no's, but just get out there and just do it.
And it's service, guys. Like, you can't think about, I'm telling you right now, if you're in this industry, I don't care, any sales industry, full commission, if you think about the money, you will fail. You will fail. People,
100%.
You contrary to what you think that you're good, people can see that right through you. But if they see that you're genuine, you just want to serve and you want to help, like throwing a CMA on a social, get on their Facebook Live. Hey, listen, CMA, I did a CMA for a family member, found out, it was worth $50,000. They found out it was worth $50,000 over. We're able to get them into their dream home because they built up that equity. Just give a story. Tell people what you do. People won't know what you do unless you tell them. That's the problem. You're so introverted. This is not an introverted industry. Get out there, be vulnerable.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we'll wrap up there. Just to, go ahead.
Before we wrap up, there's some big changes going on with some work situations.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll touch on that a little bit. So we're fortunate to actually be merging with a new company, Jason Mitchell Group, and we decided to go this route because they have the best platforms and the best client services to be able to help us service all of our clients' needs from top to bottom. So, it's a very extensive platform for our agents. We have all the technology available, super robust lead generation partners. So we are going to be working with a lot more family members in our community, and it's very, very exciting. So can't wait to see what it brings us.
Hey, if anybody wants to get in there and they want to talk to that, Will, how do they get a hold of you? Because you actually hold a pretty prominent position there.
So, yeah, I'll actually be the division president for the Cleveland market and all of Ohio. So I'll be doing all the recruiting, and if somebody's interested, they can get a hold of me via phone or email.
Tell the audience.
We'll put his information in the bottom.
Okay,
Make
excellent.
It easy. Yeah, there you go.
Sure, you know what?
Cool.
Awesome.
So, I mean, just a quick recap. You got to understand can't be in it for the money. You got to understand it's going to be hard. You're going to have to work a lot. It's
the money will come, by the way. Trust me.
Do the right thing and the money will come.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you just got to know it's going to be stressful, but if you're willing to go push through it and realize the reason you're in it is the right reasons, you'll be just fine.
Changing families' lives.
Yep.
That's what it's about, guys.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think it was pretty successful. Thanks, Will, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Will.
Awesome, man. All right.